Hey there, and welcome to my little corner of the world and over to you. Today is Eclipse Day, April 8th. I have the greatest musician here. His name is Bill Toms. He is from Pittsburgh and he has done incredible amounts of work. His latest single, I Fulfilled My Dream, is out. We talk about that. And he has also worked with Bruce Springsteen in the studio and has opened up for him and Bob Dylan and many others. So I really hope you have a good time listening to this. I know I did. Guy from Pittsburgh. It's just a lot of fun. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I'll see you on the other side of this.
Good. How you doing, Bob?
Excellent, excellent. Up there in Pittsburgh today?
In Pittsburgh, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I
Just south of
I
Pittsburgh, actually. Yeah.
I grew up in Cleveland, so
Mm.
know a little bit about Pittsburgh over there. I remember
Yeah. The same.
Donnie Iris was pretty big when I was growing
Yeah.
up.
He's still going, man. He's 81 years old.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
he had a big concert just last week. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, another guy who grew up near me, he graduated high school when I was just about 3 months old. His name is Eric Carmen, who just
Oh,
passed away.
my
Yeah.
goodness. Yeah. Wow. Isn't
Yeah.
that something? Wow.
It's a small world. Small
It
world.
is. Where are you at now?
I have been living in Atlanta for 35 years.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah.
It's a nice music town.
It really has. It's become really, really good with music and definitely film lately. A lot of stuff
Yeah.
going on here. Definitely. Yeah, I've been in the TV industry now for all these years and I do this on the side. I really enjoy doing a podcast talking to, great artists like yourself.
Oh, well, we appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely. So, yeah, you got a great exciting new single that is really hitting the airwaves as we're getting into spring here in
Yeah.
2024.
Yeah. I mean, thank you. I appreciate it. It's a little bit different for us, but no, not really, I guess.
Yeah.
It's I've been working with Rick Wachowski for a lot of years, and he kind of shapes the sound a little bit too. So that's good.
Yeah, yeah. So, what was the idea behind putting this single out now? Was it just like it just hit you? It's like, hey, do you write every day and just kind of noodle around? How does the process work for you?
Well, I think I'm a lazy writer. There's people that seem to be able to write every day. I kind of write, um, as I feel it. If I sit down, I grab a guitar, or if I just have something in my mind, if I'm writing something, just words. But no, it's not every day. I mean, I've read things like Paul Simon would, set aside 8 hours a day and write. I couldn't do that. I'd just get too bored. But no, when I do write a lot though. I got a lot of things written that I haven't released. So
Yeah.
yeah.
If an idea hits you, do you just go to the side of the road, write it down? Just you got a notebook, or
Yeah.
do you use anything else?
Well, now it's nice because I have a phone with I just record my, on the vocal recording thing on the phone. I just press the button and and then I get home and actually it's just happened a couple of days ago. I had a bunch of words. I put some really cool music down, and I didn't record it, but I just kind of jotted down some tablatures. And yesterday I went to play it, and I cannot remember what the groove of that song is to save my life. I
Yeah,
can't
yeah.
remember it. And I always thought, even when I was young, it's always been, if I don't remember it the next day, it's not that good. So I'm thinking maybe that's the way it is.
Yeah, and to have that discipline on like 8 hours a day, I mean, like that becomes a
Oh,
job. It's like you got
can
into
you
this not
imagine
to.
that? Oh my God. Yeah, I couldn't do anything for 8 hours in one.
Yeah, it's like that's why I got
Oh,
into this
geez.
business so it could be
Right.
flexible. So growing up there, how did you get into it? Did you watch the Ed Sullivan show one night and say, "Hey, I want to do this"? Like so
I want
many.
to do that. Yeah. Sissy and Bobby, right? Um, I had, well, my family's fairly musical. I mean, my father was a horn player,
Oh,
and my mother played piano. My two older sisters played piano. So there's always music. There was always some sort of music around, and my older sisters, um, they would go to dances, and in Pittsburgh there was this, like sort of like the garage rock music, and you know soul music was big, and this is mid late 60s, and they listened to a lot of Motown, a lot of Stax, a lot of course the Beatles, and I was a young kid and would watch the Monkees,
yeah,
and
yeah.
that pretty much did it for me, so I always, looking back, I think I've always wanted to play music. Um, and I think that I realized it as when I was a teenager, and I was really, really liking this one girl, and I was probably 14 years old, and her brother had a guitar sitting in his house, and I went in there and I picked it up, and she says, "Boy, you look really good with that guitar." And I said, "That's all. that's it.
Off to the
That's all I.
races.
That's all I need." And so I took some lessons and just kept playing.
Yeah, musical
Yeah.
tone there too. Did you have a little bit of the Philly influence in there, or was that kind of, your opposite ends of the stage?
Um, yeah, the Philly influence was, part of that. I think that in Pittsburgh, now this is when I was a kid, so I didn't get it full fledged. I got it from my sisters who had on 45s and the radio. But in Pittsburgh, it was you know uh, High on a Hill, by Scott English, or um, the El Rondes, with 69, which came out in 69, which is the first song I think I ever learned to play on my guitar. But those were all like really popular in Pittsburgh, so that was my first inkling that, okay, there was a sound here. I mean, I
Yeah,
was so young, I
yeah,
didn't realize it. As I got older, I realized that there's a sound here. The Jaggers with Donnie Iris,
yeah, yeah.
they put out the Rapper just about that time, and that was really, really the big thing. That was the sound of Pittsburgh that made it big at that time.
Yeah, and like a lot of these cities, it was much grittier then. You look New York, Cleveland, Chicago, all these places were so much grittier back then, and
Sure, sure.
where they cleaned up the environment.
Yeah, right, 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 right. Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, I can remember sitting on a porch in my neighborhood in Pittsburgh, and all the kids were gathered around. My grandmother was there, and everybody was talking about what they're going to be when they grow up, what they're going to be when you're going to be a fireman, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. And I vividly remember, and this is probably 68, 69, my grandmother saying, "Well, you can always get work in the mills."
Ah,
I
yeah,
remember it to this day, and it wasn't much longer after that where they started shutting it down,
so rough. Yeah, we had
Yeah,
that up in Cleveland. Yeah.
yeah, and it's like it was like that. I think that time period was very transitional.
Yeah. And it got people like Springsteen up in Jersey to write about these kind of things. It was definitely an
Exactly.
influential
Yeah,
thing.
sure, sure, because it's the struggle of the working class, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Totally could feel it. So, what was your first gig with like getting up there? Was it in junior high school when you just got up in front of a crowd and said, "Yeah, this feeling, this rush of performing live."
Well, it's a funny story because the first time I ever played in front of people, I can remember I auditioned. I was just like an 18, 17 years old or something. And I auditioned for this older guy. He was probably 23, 22. And he really, oh yeah, you're going to be the guitar player. The following week, I come back. He said, "Well, we're gonna do a gig at an art festival, an art fair." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." Now we hadn't really played any songs or anything. We played maybe a couple songs that we knew. So he gathered up me and a couple other guys, and we set up in this parking lot. And there's an art fair, and people had their art setups and everything across it. And we started playing, and we probably played like 4 songs, the same 4 songs a couple times. And I just remember people packing up their art and leaving. It was so bad. So that was one of my first ones that I can remember. And I did another one that I can remember. It might have been the first or the second, but we did in a school, St. Anne's School, and it was a Friday night in the auditorium. And I can remember thinking to myself, I don't know what I should wear. That was a big thing. What do you wear when you play, your rock
Right.
and roll? And I just had seen, or I had watched the last waltz at a theater.
Ah,
And I remember
yeah.
Robbie Robertson wearing a scarf. So I had to have a scarf on. So that was my,
That looks cool. Yeah.
yeah, this looks cool. And I got to the game. It's like, well, it's summertime. What are you wearing a scarf for?
Yeah. It's good for the vocals, you know. I see these guys before shows and it's like, yeah, it's
Yeah.
boiling out here, but they're still wearing something like that. Yeah,
Right, right.
it's so weird. Yeah, I saw Billy Joel backstage and he was doing that. It's like it's boiling here in Atlanta before the show. Like, what are you doing? It's like I think it just it warms it up.
Warms the vocal cords up. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. I love that movie, Last Waltz. And I read Roger Ebert's review. And it's like, yeah, there's a lot of turmoil backstage there.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny because I saw the movie in Pittsburgh. They used to have movies on Saturday night at the Pittsburgh Playhouse um, for $1 at midnight. And one of the ones that came through was The Last Waltz, and this was probably 1979.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen it before in 1979, I think it was, and we went and watched it at midnight, and man, I was just blown away.
Yeah,
Just
yeah. It's like they're having so much fun, but like, yeah, it's like, oh yeah, people were coming down off these drugs and all that. But yeah,
yeah,
great Scorsese stylist there. It's just really, really
yeah,
nice.
right, yeah. And that got me into the band, and you know, got me looking back even further, into, the history of Muddy Waters and what, where all this stuff came from. So, I'm always more like a student, I always wanted to find out, hey, if Chuck Berry or if Keith Richards listened to Chuck Berry was listening to Muddy Waters was, T-Bone Walker, I always wanted to find out where it was all coming from, and that's fun to me. That's just fun. I love it.
Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't know about blues and stuff like that without like Led Zeppelin and the Stones. I mean, these guys
Sure.
really dug
Exactly.
into that. Yeah,
Exactly.
good introduction into that as well. So that's really cool. Yeah, we had a place they always did these midnight shows in Cleveland. We had a place called the Scrumpy Dump and Rocky Horror was always on at
Oh
midnight and
yeah, yeah.
these kind of
Right.
things. Yeah.
Right.
Did you perform through the years? Did you stay more regional? Did you do a lot of touring outside of Pittsburgh?
Well, early on it was just regional, and then when I got together with Joe Grishecki, we formed Joe Grishecki and the House Rockers, and then things opened up a little bit more, and we would do regional, and then we would do a little bit of traveling, and then we started going to Europe, and we did that. I was in that band for 20 years, you know. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And you did what, half a dozen albums with Joe?
Um, hmm, yeah, at least, yeah,
Yeah.
six. From 89 was our first, and I left in 2006. So how many ever
Yeah.
that was,
It's amazing. The catalogs just get, they're so expansive. It's like, wait, I can't remember what year did I do that now? It all, yeah,
And
it
then
can
there's a
become,
live record put in there, and
yeah.
this, whatever. Yeah.
That's really
It's
cool.
fun. The journey is very cool.
Yeah.
I always, my wife and I always talk about, if it wasn't for the guitar, I wouldn't see half of the places that I've been to and meet the people that I have. And, it's fantastic. Even though I, never sold a million records, we've
Yeah.
done a lot, so I'm really appreciative of that.
Yeah, it's all about the art form and the enjoyability of
Yeah,
it all. So yeah, I
it
mean,
is.
touring can be both, exciting and kind of grueling. Some of these people are all on these farewell tours.
Yeah, I mean, and take some of the blues guys that I mean, I remember seeing Pine Top Perkins. He was like in his 90s playing at a small blues club in Pittsburgh, and I'm thinking in a van, and I'm thinking, oh my God, that's got to be rough. That's got to be rough, and it is. I mean, I have a love hate relationship with traveling.
Yeah.
I mean, we would go to Europe. I mean, I was going to Europe up until right when the pandemic hit, and people say, "Oh man, you're very lucky to be able to do that." As I am very lucky to be able to do that, but it's hard work.
Yeah,
It's
it
hard
is.
work, and you're on the road every day. In a van. You know, lugging your own stuff, and I
Yeah.
mean, and you have to work every day because you got to make the money, or there's no reason to go there.
Yeah.
So it's grueling. You know and you're
Yeah.
only on stage for a couple hours. You got to spend the rest of the day trying to figure out how to move forward. So uh you know no, we'll go out. We're going to Columbus. We're playing Columbus. We'll play in Philadelphia in a couple weeks, and North Carolina. We do like some regional stuff, but haven't been getting on the road for months at a time anymore.
Yeah, it's, in show business, people look at this and say, wow, that's just so exciting and so glamorous. But it's like, you don't really realize, yeah, airports, vans, rental
Yeah,
cars,
yeah,
carting things around, sound checks, rehearsal, sound checks. It's like, yeah, you want to sound good, you want to get it down right. And it's like,
right.
yeah, that's the hard work.
Yeah, it is. And it's like you said, it can be grueling. And I've had two back surgeries or three back surgeries already in my life, and just to sit in a van and or on an airplane for 12, 14 hours is just not what it used to be.
That's rough. That's rough.
So
Yeah,
as you get older, things get a little bit different. It's a little bit more. Um, you put it in perspective a little bit more.
yeah. Back surgery is really, really rough on a lot of people. Look at Phil Collins. I mean, that guy who
Yeah,
had all the money in the world, basically, and they couldn't even get his surgeries right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Lucky I'm doing all right, but it's still tough, man.
Yeah, yeah, but it's it's the love of it all, and
Sure,
and
sure.
getting that feeling after performing. I'm sure getting that audience feedback is just a real high.
Yeah, I mean, you work on adrenaline, right? I mean, that's how it works. It gets you through. You know, so yeah, I mean, but the next day, you can hardly move. So my saxophone player, he had a compression fracture, and he was out for 3 months. And it's just tough, man. You get over 60 and things start falling
Yeah,
apart a little.
it's like a car. It's like you got to have the insurance too. But it's like, yeah, it's really rough.
Mhm.
Yeah. So this great new single, "I Fulfilled My Dream," and you
Thank
went
you.
over to Weirton, West Virginia.
Yeah,
That's
Ricky Bukowski, who plays with Crack the Sky, and he did work with B.E. Taylor, and he's been a friend of mine. Well, we recorded with him with the House Rockers too, but for well over 35 years, and he's matter of fact, I'm going there tomorrow to do some work. But yeah, he has an interesting way, of bringing a song and fleshing it out to make it more cinematic, which is what I like. I like how he works that. It's just he has a way of hearing things, and
yeah.
we
Talk
work
about
good
that.
together because he's more the Beatles. I'm more the Stones.
Yeah,
If that,
yeah. That's a nice mix.
I'm like, well, that's good. That's good. He said, no, you can do it better. You can do it better. Clean that
Yeah.
up.
Doesn't get any better than that, though. I like that line, time is priceless, supplies are low. It's very, very much hits it right there.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about. I mean, you get to a certain age. I mean, I'm 63 now, and you get to a certain point where you start thinking, um, you know, was it worth it? Do people actually listen? And funny enough, I found that they do. And even though I don't have a mansion, and even though I don't drive a real fancy car, um, I have a beautiful family. I've always been able to sustain a career. So yeah, I fulfilled those dreams.
Oh,
And that's what
yeah.
that's about.
Not easy in music. It's, if you were to start out now, it's like, yeah, you got more accessibility. You could distribute much more on your own, but it seems like everybody can do it. That's the big trade-off
That's the
there.
problem. Everybody does do it. Everybody
Yeah.
does. I talked to somebody in radio. Well, you probably get the same thing. I mean,
Yeah.
young kids, man, they're recording on their computer in the morning and releasing stuff on the internet in the afternoon. So it's just overwhelming, and there's no filters. I mean, when I remember being a teenager and thinking, wow, to release a record, you had to be signed to a record label for the most part.
Right.
You couldn't just go into a studio and say, I want to put out a record. But now people do.
Yeah, yeah. It's so much
You
more different. You could be more in control of your art, but yeah, there's no filter. You don't have your Clive Davises around to really
Right.
vet things and get you out there.
Exactly.
Thanks.
So yeah, it's a little different. And in releasing music, like we're doing this single, I released a single last year, and I released this single, and I'll probably put the full length out. But you know, I'm not even sure how that works anymore. Do you put a record out? Do you put a CD? Or do you just release it, um, digitally? I mean, it's very, very complicated. It's
It
not as
really
easy.
is.
You
Yeah.
don't where and our audience, I know, is a little older, so they want something to look at. They want something in their hands. So you got to kind of put CDs out, and then you got the LPs, and it just gets really confusing of what people actually, how they get their music.
Yeah, and it's tough to know about marketing digitally. Do you get that on Spotify? You look at numbers, and it's like you just want to create art here. It's like you don't have
Yeah,
time for that.
right. Exactly. And I mean, somebody once told me too that a great artist, he said, they'll take your money if you want to give it to them. Meaning the people that they'll tell you, well, we'll get you on Spotify, we'll get you 700 million streams on Spotify or whatever. But you got to pay, and who knows where that money is going, and what that means. Is that, are people actually listening to the music and buying your music? Or so yeah, it's very complicated.
Yeah. And you see these numbers on Spotify, it's like, I don't know, are these a bunch of bots in the middle of Russia just hitting me or what? It's like anybody really out there listening. It's
Exactly. And they'll take your money. You want to
yeah.
give it to them, and they'll tell you, oh, you've got X amount of hits. But yeah, like you said, it's all a scam, I think.
Feels that way. So your band Hard Rain, where does that
Right.
name come from? It just it
Well,
seems like there's a story behind that.
it actually, when we first started, we were like a four-piece band, and um, I wanted to. We had two African Americans in the band. There's four of us, so I wanted to call it Black Ice.
Yeah, that's
And,
a cool name. Yeah.
my buddy said, I don't know about that. He says, what about Hard Rain? We were big Dylan fans, and um, So I went with Hard Rain. I figured from the Dylan song. It
Yeah.
worked. It worked better.
Yeah, got some good names in there and people who've been with you for a while.
Yeah.
You still
Yeah.
have Tom Breeding
Tom Riding. Yeah.
writing.
Hmm.
Nice. Since yeah,
Yeah.
it's been a while. Yeah. And Steve Benzenberger on keyboards. We've had for a
Yep.
while. Yeah.
Even now we have I mean, Phil Bronze has played sax for me for close to 30 years now. And I still play with Bernie Herr, who plays percussion. Bernie will be turning 78, and he
Hmm.
played in House Rockers with me. We've been together for 40 years, I guess it was. But he'll do occasional gigs now. He's getting up there. He doesn't like to move around as much as he used to.
Yeah. Understandable.
Yeah. And all the guys, I mean, we got a horn section now, the Soulville horns. Um, and that's funny too, because Bernie used to play drums for the Soulville All Stars out of Harrisburg, the
Hmm.
Soulville Records, and he was in a band called the Soulville All Stars. So when I wanted a name for our horns, so we just called it the Soulville Horns. So that's where that came from.
Yeah, and you've opened up for some pretty good acts there over the years as well. Who was your
Yeah.
most memorable out of the entire pack?
Um, Levon Helm, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because when I was in the House Rockers with Joe Grishek in the House Rockers, we played with the band and Widespread Panic, I believe it was, in
Pretty big
Atlantic
down here. Yeah. Big time.
City. And the guys in the band at the time, Rick Danko was still alive, and Levon Helm and Garth Hudson, and they couldn't have been nicer. I just remember they just treated us like gold. They were just so friendly. And when I got the chance to open up for Levon here in Pittsburgh, myself with my band at a smaller club, Moondogs, which is a smaller club here in Pittsburgh, he wasn't actually singing. His daughter was singing because he had cancer. He was fighting throat cancer.
Mm.
But when he walked into that club and he looked at me, he says, he could hardly talk, but he says, "I know you." And I said, "Yeah." And I told him where I met him. And he gave me a big hug and talked about the shows. And he just a really, really, really human, human kindness. That's all I can say about that.
Oh wow. What a great story. Yeah. And some of these other people you've opened up for. Stevie Ray Vaughan is in that mix.
Yeah, never really got to meet Stevie Ray Vaughan, but because at the time we played with him in Pittsburgh. At that time, I think he was just getting sober, so I don't think he really wanted to fraternize with a whole lot of people. But I'll tell you what, man, what a show, what a show.
Yeah, he's a total genius. I saw him when I went to Ohio University in '86. Just didn't
Yeah.
seem to be too much of a talker. Fabulous Thunderbirds open up for him. It was just
Oh yeah.
amazing.
Nice. Nice. Yeah. Yeah. And another band that I just had a great time with was Little Feat.
Yeah, great
We
band.
opened up for Little Feat, and I was so nervous. And I've always been a big Little Feat fan, but I love Richie Hayward's drumming, and he always had a beard or a facial hair or something, and that's how I remember seeing him. And so when we played with them, I was tuning up a Les Paul guitar that I had, and I was nervous as hell. And this guy comes up to me, starts talking about, "Oh, that's a nice guitar, what are you getting?" And I thought he was just a guy that worked there. And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm nervous. I'm just trying to get my shit together." And he says, I'm Richie from the Feet." And I looked at him. I'm like, "Dude, I'm so sorry. I didn't recognize you." Uh,
That
but
happens.
what a band that is, man.
Premier band, yeah. And Springsteen was involved with producing one of the projects you've been involved with.
Yeah. the house rocker. We Jugger Shaking the House Rockers. We went out to California and recorded, and he produced an album called American Babylon, which was released in '95. And
Nice.
I mean, I could sit here for hours telling you stories about that, but I mean, it's obviously such a great experience um, working with him. And one of the things about working with Bruce was he always made you feel comfortable.
Yeah.
I never felt nervous. I never felt like I was walking on eggshells. It just always was just another guy, and he was funny, and he made you laugh, and we made him laugh, and we just had a good time.
Yeah, it seems so down to earth. Somebody who basically,
Yeah.